All right. I call this special meeting of the Edcott-Chelmsford Independent School District to order. It is 12:13, Friday, August 6th, 2021. Mr. Smalter, will you?
Yes, sir. President Chris Morales.
Here.
Vice President Roy Lozano.
Here.
Trustee J.J. Ibarra.
Here.
Trustee Bobby Peacock.
Here.
Trustee Nano Torres.
Here.
Trustee Tony Barco.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
All right. A quorum of board members presiding in accordance with the provisions of Section 551125, Texas Government Code. We have Mr. Lozano, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Rocha, will you lead us in prayer?
Yes. Let's bow our head. Heavenly Father, we just come with a grateful heart, and we thank you for this beautiful day you have provided for us, and also for this opportunity to gather here. Heavenly Father, we ask that you bless and guide Dr. Rodriguez and all our board members as they make those important decisions for our district. We ask that you bless them and their families, and that you bless everybody gathered here today. And once again, Heavenly Father, we just give you all the praise and glory. In Jesus' name we say amen.
Amen.
That's item 3, open forum, comments from the public.
No public comment?
Okay. So we'll go to item 4, presentation, budget workshop. Ms. Christina Ochoa.
Chris, what time do you start the meeting?
Since 12:30.
Mr. President, members of the board, I've asked Ms. Ochoa to prepare a presentation before our next meeting. We'll be looking at the adoption of the budget. This is a preliminary overview so that we're prepared to make better decisions when we convene the next time.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm going to present to you the preliminary budget. After we finalized some numbers from our appraisal district for property values, and we were able to come up with a tax rate with help of legal counsel and our investment advisors. So first off, just, ADA drives all of our funding. So I just wanted to take some attention to see, we have some downward trends in ADA, and ultimately last year we ended with 4,001 students. Okay, so the impact that's had on our budget, will be made up with our hold harmless provisions from TEA. Okay, so at the end of last year we were at 4,001 students. Our preliminary budget is as follows. We have about $5,020,000 coming from tax revenues. We have $43,832,000 coming from our state program allotments. And we have another $4,752,000 coming from our food service, and that's also made up of money that we receive as in the form of indirect costs from our federal grants. Okay? And that puts us at $53,606,000. As far as our expenditures, we always want to keep our expenditures in line with our revenues so that we can keep our budget balanced. Payroll costs makes up a large portion of our budget. This year is about 67%. I had to bump it up to almost 70 so that it could keep in line with what we spent this year. We're at $37 million this year. And since we have to retain our teachers and keep everybody on staff due to ESSER, I left the budget the same at $37 million. Okay. We did have to reduce a few areas such as professional contracted service and supplies and materials. The travel, this year we only spent about $2.8 million, but due to our students not being in all the sports and so forth, we didn't spend all of that. So right now it's tentatively at 3.1. Our debt service remains the same. That's what we use to pay our bond debt and any other lease payments we have for the stadium, the lighting, and so forth. Okay, so pretty much I didn't mess with anything as far as debt service or payroll. The other ones were the ones.
Mr. Ochoa, just a clarification. You said we spent 2.8 million, or we budgeted 2.8
We
million?
budgeted 2.8, I'm sorry. We
Yeah.
haven't spent it all,
Okay.
yeah.
What was the expense for last year? Travel?
For travel, I think they have about 300,000 left, roughly,
Left out of how much budgeted last year?
2.8, for
So-
just travel,
So they had 2.5?
2.8.
Seems kind of high for we didn't really participate much this last year.
Well, the 6,400, I'm sorry, that's not just travel, that's miscellaneous operating expenses, it's travel, employee,
So you're
student,
saying out of the
so
64,
meals.
a portion of it is travel, a portion's other items? Could you find out how much we actually spent on travel,
Okay,
just to get an idea?
just travel, student or employee or both?
Everything has-
Both. Break it down.
everything, yeah.
Both,
Everything has to do with travel, just to give us a gauge and idea.
yeah. I
Let's
mean,
do board travel too, let's see how much we spent.
okay,
0.
all right, any questions?
Chicken egg.
Didn't go anywhere last year.
Okay, so these are our program allotments for this year based on our, final numbers of ADA from this previous school year. We do have to spend 55% of our compensatory ed grant, our career and technology grant, our special ed grant, our bilingual grant, the college and career readiness, in order to meet our spending requirements with TDA. The early ed allotment, school safety, and dyslexia, we're required to spend 100%. This year, we are being given monies for GT. In previous years, there wasn't money sent to us from TDA for specifically GT. And so this is what TEA is giving us. This is the proposed budget. Again, some of them are a little less because the 55%, and then the difference goes into our general fund. Okay. So tax rate. Previously, our tax rate was at 1.258 for this previous school year, and I think the year before was the same. On the M&O side, it was at a 1.0325 and a 0.2255 for our debt service. This year, it's going to remain the same for our debt service, but our maintenance and operation tax will be decreasing due to the fact that our maximum compress rate actually was lowered to a 0.822. Okay, so we are able to offer our taxpayers a lower tax rate this year without an election and all that, and we will actually be gaining an additional $1 million in revenue, thanks to a resolution that will be passed. And then just to let you know that the property values did increase by 13.1%.
So if we don't decrease our taxes, there'll be an increase of $1 million, you said?
If we go with the recommendation, I think due to the fact that we had Hurricane Hannah and the governor proclaimed the disaster, some advice from the investors and people said the compressed rate is allowing us to make up funding on our tier 2 site if y'all adopt that resolution. So that additional monies will come in that form.
So we need to adopt that if we decide.
Yes, Board, so at the next meeting, we're proposing a resolution that will allow us to lower the overall tax rate, but still allow us to free up money due to the Hurricane Hannah disaster declaration.
Do we have to lower the tax rate?
Technically, you don't have to.
No, we do.
What has been our impact with with Winter Storm Uri? I know that electrical.
So the following year, we'll be able to also apply for the same resolution due to that.
For that one?
That disaster.
Ben, we have to lower the tax rate or we keep it the same?
We do, because after the last legislative session, not this most recent one, but the previous one, they had property tax reform. And so our M&O tax rate is comprised of two portions of it. The first portion is our maximum compressed rate, which is at MCR, and that's set by the state of Texas. The second portion, it's called Tier 2 pennies, and we're limited to how many Tier 2 pennies we can use based on how many Tier 2 pennies we used last year, and I believe it was around 13.
13.7.
The max amount of Tier 2 pennies you could use is 17, and this year we're able to max out those pennies because of Hurricane Hannah, and that's the resolution that Ms. Ochoa is speaking about for y'all,
Okay.
for y'all to approve. So without that resolution, the tax rate actually would have been I think like $1.17 maybe, or 18. It would have been even lower. So by y'all approving that resolution, it actually generates an extra $1 million of revenue for y'all. And it's still a lower tax rate than it was last year.
That
So you're
sounds
still
good.
providing
Wow,
tax
so we
relief.
make more money and lower taxes?
My only fear there then will be is that we're gonna have to revisit this then again next year or the following year.
Yes, sir.
And in the event that things change, we could actually see a tax increase.
I mean, the state's gonna, that MCR, that maximum compressed rate, that's, like I said, that's set by the state of Texas. And all indications so far since the maximum compressed rate has been in effect, they've lowered it every year. Last year it was high 90s, and now this year it's low 80s. So, I mean, potentially, yes, but the only reason we're able to do this, and oh, by the way, that resolution is only temporary. It's only for this year. Next year, we can't use Hurricane Hannah again. So next year, we are going to be, we may be able to use Hurricane Uri as the winter storm that happened in February to use the full 17 cents,
Wow.
but we won't be able to use Hurricane Hannah. So that addresses your concern, Trustee Torres, as far as increasing taxes for the future, because it's only a temporary fix.
So my question was, has there been an increase in our electrical bills as a result of the winter storm?
The winter storm, I don't think so. The utilities pretty much remain constant, so.
Because other municipalities have been hit hard.
But that's another concern. I mean, if our utilities are remaining constant, meaning that we're not utilizing the buildings at 100%.
And we did recently switch over to a new provider that y'all approved about 2 years ago, and that provider promised lower rates. And the only reason I know is because we haven't had a bill in a while, so that was kind of worrying us. But we did reach out to them, and, you know, the transition is still going on. So the last time we paid a huge utility bill was in June, which is our normal
I
size bill.
think then I'd ask for a breakdown is, let's look at the bill for the last, I'd say, 3 years. Only because we've had some situations in the last 2 years. You know, we had the storm, we had the hurricane, we had shutdown, COVID. You know, we really weren't at 100% capacity. I mean, we didn't use football field for one season practically.
Well, I do know that the North High School campus, for example, doesn't have any controls. That system's on 24/7.
Correct.
And just to
I mean,
see
that-
where we're at, maybe we can see a pattern of behavior, because your comment right now that everything seems consistent, that worries me, because
Well,
it's not a consistent
yeah,
environment.
sorry. Consistent that we have to pay them. They're like set costs that we have to pay every single month. But, you know, yes, they do fluctuate.
Cool.
As far as our local revenue, like I said, for our taxes, we're estimated to receive about $5,020,000. And that's, you know, with on the M&O side, it breaks it down how much, and on the debt service side to make our bond payment. And then we also receive monies from TA to help with that payment as well. So we're estimated to receive about $5,020,000 in taxes. So on the ADA side, our hold harmless has us at an ADA of 4,370, but since our actual student count is 4,001, the loss in that funding is going to be made up with ESSER 2. So we're scheduled to receive $12 million in ESSER 2 funds, and from that $12 million, approximately $2,760,000 will go to cover
Do
our state aid.
we know how long, I mean, have we heard anything, Doc, as far as hold harmless? How long TA plans to continue this, or?
There is no further development on that. It's for the current year.
Yeah, it looks like
Okay.
they're bleeding money right now.
Yeah.
So we lost, or, no, never mind.
369 students
300, okay. That's
Last
all.
year.
last year.
Yeah, but they're paying us for the 4370, right?
Yes,
Right.
that's actually from like 2019. That's
But-
our
And,
88,
and they're,
94.
and just to be clear, they're not funding us at that, they're expecting us to supplant with our ESSER 2 funding.
To
make up
compensate the
difference.
loss
Yeah.
of the 300.
Yeah, instead of funding us the additional amount, they're pulling it from ESSER and supplanting.
Yeah, they're saying that the money I gave you for other, use it for that.
Yeah.
So it's 369 is what we,
Well, because ESSER is federal funding, correct?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, so from that pocket.
Yeah. Okay.
And on the last slide, I just did a little comparison. So we already know we have to give up 2.7 from ESSER 2 to cover the loss. What would happen if we had an additional 100 students not show up? And what would happen if we had an additional 200 students not show up? And so the amount just keeps increasing. You know, our 12 million is reduced by 3 million, by 4.5, and so forth.
It's basically $1 million per 100 students.
Pretty much.
What's our current enrollment, Doc?
How many have enrolled in online registration? I don't have that number for you, but I can get it for you.
Rocha, you don't have it by chance, Ms. Rocha?
No, I'm gonna,
It starts on the
this weekend, we're going, so I wanted to get an actual, amount of students this week, so we can, today.
But I will get that number to you.
So we have to go get those.
But the ESSER funds are supposed to cover us for the
Well,
next
but
3 years.
Right.
So that we have that money that was given to us to cover the loss of students that we're
I think
gonna
it'd be
have.
safe to assume we're not close to 4,000.
It would be safe to say we're not close to that.
And what are we gonna close to 3,900?
Right, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Yep.
But thank God we got that ESSER funds to cover that loss.
Correct.
For the next 3 years, correct? So we're okay.
The other documents in your folder are basically how those allotments were. Okay. Any questions?
How much, I mean, we had our budget last year. How much did we save? Would you happen to know how much
did
we
we
actually
save?
saved?
We actually went over our budget last year.
We went, like last year? Or
Like,
this current year?
since we had the same budget for when we had students, and then this
current one,
current
this
year,
current
this
year.
current year, since we didn't really have much going on, we went over?
We did. We had additional expenditures, especially in technology, in providing different services. All that came out of ESSER funding. It didn't come out of local funding, but it was. The CARES Act funding paid for that overspending from
Okay.
the budget amount.
That was the laptops and
The
the
laptops
hotspots.
and the
For all the COVID
hotspots.
prep,
Oh, yeah, the COVID stuff. Okay, well, that's understandable.
And we also had we had to repair the roofs and so forth.
But that came out of our budget. Okay. That explains it.
thank you, ma'am.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Great job.
thank you. All right, next item I have is item 5, consent agenda. We have items A, B, all the way to J.
There's no questions or comments. I'd like to make a motion to approve all consent agenda items as presented.
Second?
All right, so I've got a motion by Mr. Lozano, second by Mr. Smalsry to approve all consent agenda items. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, consent agenda items passed. Next, we have item 6, discussion and action items. Request to approve contract with vendor for Emergency Connectivity Fund, ECF. Mr. Joe Torres.
Emergency Connectivity Fund.
I guess I'm gonna start off, I was trying to figure out how to get this started, and I went back to one of the presentations I did a couple of years back, and Mr. Osama, questioned me, because we're gonna talk about funding first. So I'm just gonna start off making a statement so that, you know, we can maybe relax a little bit, not worry about too much.
I think that was Mr. Ibarra's comment to you.
He's calling one of y'all out.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the best way to get started. So just, it deals with this, but at the same time, just kind of give you a little heads up of what we're doing. You all have been very gracious with me as far as E-rate is concerned. And every time I bring up something, we're able to, you know, start with those programs. And with that program, you know, for this year, I'm estimating that we're going to return about $70,000 to the district. I've already secured the $18,000 for the first part of the summer, and the other 50 some odd, I'm planning to secure it by October. Okay, so with that said, just to let you know, there's some money there if you choose to approve what I'm going to discuss. We could use it as a fallback, okay? So, Emergency Connectivity Fund. The Emergency Connectivity Fund basically is a fund that was produced by the FCC. It's about $7.17 billion. And what it's for is to provide the tools and services to the communities for remote learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, it was something that came out this summer. They're pushing it really quick. They're wanting us to move if we want to participate. So we've got a very short timeline on this one. The people the individuals or the organizations that can participate are schools, libraries, they're eligible for E-rate services, and we are eligible, so we can participate in this program. The services and equipment that are eligible for support are anything that can provide advanced telecom for students, school staff, library patrons that have unmet needs during this pandemic, but it cannot be something that we purchase for the school district. It's got to be something for remote learning, something that we purchase for outside of the district, okay? And so when we started looking at this fund, I was trying to figure out, how can we use it? And the first thing that popped in my mind was, you know what? We had discussed that maybe we could put some wireless antennas and provide internet access for the community and things of that nature. But they have a rule in place that says, if there's already a commercial way of doing it, we're not going to fund it. So that was out the door. Then I went back and I remembered that we had discussed different options as well, but one of the things that we discussed was the internet on the buses. And so that is eligible. That is something that is eligible. And so looked it up and asked the question, and the response was, yes, schools may use ECF support for internet services on buses that transport students, whether they are in transit or parked. So I know that those ideas we had discussed before. I said, great. The next thing that I wanted to figure out was, okay, so how much will they fund us? Because those numbers seemed a little low. One of the things they told us was they would only fund us $250 per Wi-Fi. And so I said, well, that's not going to really work because the money that we need for the buses is more than that. But when we looked further into it, the guidelines on buses and the internet access is if we can produce a reasonable cost, they will fund it at 100%. So ultimately, if I can make the application with your blessing, and they say that, you know what, you have reasonable costs, then we could come out of this without spending time. They pay for it all, okay? But I need to make sure that you do understand. What if they say no? What if they say, you know what, we don't think it's a reasonable cost, we'll cover 80%. And that's why I started with the very first part saying, you know what, there is some funding that I'm working with, and we already got 18,000. I'm sure that I'm gonna get the 52 in October. So we could cover if the Emergency Connectivity Fund doesn't decide to give us the entire cost, okay? The proposal that we have from Premier Wireless, it's a company that's been around for 28 years working with buses. It came in at 33 buses. I talked to the transportation director, and it came out to $49,499.67. That's for the equipment, the installation costs, okay? The provider, it's a different vendor, it's a different cost. At T-Mobile, it's $12,295.80. The reason we went with T-Mobile is because this company has worked with T-Mobile exclusively.
Joe, Premier Wireless Premier is the bus company?
Not that, it's a company that provides services.
The Wi-Fi boxes.
Wi-Fi services. Not a
But,
bus company.
and I guess my question, I guess, to Ben would be, for procurement purposes, I mean, can we go with just one vendor? I mean, or do we have to actually bid it out or go out and look for it?
We're going through
The DIR contract, correct. So,
Okay.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So what the feds said, we're dropping all procurement processes. Just get us a quote and let's go. But that doesn't mean that we can get away from our policies.
Okay.
But in our policy, it is under the $50,000 mark. They are a DIR, they are in the DIR co-op. So, I mean, that's something, I guess, that we can pursue.
I was just thinking, trying to get one.
It has real-time camera. If something happens right there, then you can.
Yeah, just to be on the safe side, and look, again, I mean, and go through DIR, I mean, to find your other two quotes. But because, I mean, we're right under the $50,000 threshold. I mean, we're $100 away from it. Well, a couple $100. But what I'm saying is, for procurement purposes, I don't want to just.
Understood.
Yeah, but, I mean, I like the idea, don't get me wrong, we've been after this for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we have any buses with Wi-Fi at all?
None at all.
Okay.
So if I'll continue, then we can talk.
Yes.
All right, so then, they are DIRs, they have been through the process, they have bid out their equipment, so it is a state-approved vendor. We can go with them.
Perfect.
I can look at more buses, see what I can get. The only thing is that I cannot ensure that I can come back with additional quotes before the deadline. This was a quick turnaround. They're looking at August 13th as the deadline. I
Mr.
can
Torres,
search. Yes, sir.
does the bid also include the camera access? Do we have to install new cameras, or can we use our existing cameras?
Okay, so that's something that, on the record, the Wi-Fi is for student use homework, the digital divide kits
Oh, okay. Yeah.
on the record.
Now, the way, Mr. Castillo, the way the agenda item is written, can we make a motion to approve administration to do this, or?
Yep, for approval, we should, you can modify the motion as y'all see fit, but I guess, I know Mr. Ibarra had a question as far as this hearing. That's actually a good question, because of connectivity, is Premier using like somebody else's antennas, or?
No. These are actually devices that go inside the bus.
It's because, and I could be wrong, but I'm thinking that Premier is the manufacturer of the bus. Because there is a company called Premier that manufactures school buses. So I'm wondering if it's the same.
I keep that, look, it's right here, dude.
right there.
It tells
The
you
company is Premier
the
Wireless.
background of the company.
Premier Wireless.
It gives you a,
Dr. Rodriguez, what are your
that's, they
recommendations?
might be piggybacking off that.
I would recommend
That's what we're
that, given,
saying.
given the funding opportunity, that this is something that we could pursue so that our students have connectivity on long trips. We could park a bus in a neighborhood that maybe needs access, and so,
Mr. President, I make a motion for approval.
Second. All right, so I've got a motion by Mr. Smallsby, a second by Mr. Barco. All right, to approve the request, contract vendor emergency connectivity fund. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right, item 7, thank you, Mr. Torres. Item 7, we have closed session. The superintendent requests.
Mr. Chua? Just for the next meeting, could we have a little bit more information as far as on this interest rate reduction? Because I'm thinking about bond payments, I'm talking about, I remember in the past, we talked about moving some of the, the pennies to the side so we can make a difference. I want to make sure that we're able to cover our bond payments and things like that. So maybe a little bit more detail on that.
yes, sir, Mr. Castillo.
I could answer your questions, Mr. Torres. So this is on the M&O side. So I know prior, the legislature made this way more difficult because they wanted to do property tax reform. And in actuality, they're limiting a local school board's ability to raise taxes for or whatever. That's another discussion. But so
But we're not raising any, we're keeping it
no,
the same.
you're keeping it. No, you're lowering
No,
it.
but we want to keep it the same.
And it actually applies to cities too. But so prior, there was only two components of a school district's tax rate. It was the M&O side and the INS side. Now, after this legislation passed, there's three components, and two of them are on the M&O side. So the first part of your M&O, your maintenance and operations, which is our general fund, is set by the state. No matter what, we have to use that. The second portion of our M&O tax rate, it's called the Tier 2 pennies. And so we're only authorized to use up to 13 and some decimals pennies. But because of Hurricane Hannah, we're allowed to use up to 17. In any other circumstance, we would have had to call a tax ratification election to use more than those 13 pennies. So it doesn't affect our INS at all. Our INS tax rate, which covers all of our debt, is the same. We're not moving that at all.
So are we going to 17?
Yeah,
Yes,
well, that's a
if you pass the
resolution.
resolution, we're going to do 17, and the reason we don't have to have a tax ratification election is because of Hurricane Hannah and the disaster declaration. And that's only for 1 year.
Yeah, but that's, again, my concern is not, I understand the current situation. My concern is the future. As far as that moment we have to come back and increase taxes, because that's all people are gonna remember is you increase. Well, wait a minute, we lowered it before we increased, and people have that tendency, especially.
We won't be able to increase it unless we have an election.
So then we won't be able to go back then to this
It's even-
0.8.
That's even worse.
That's even more worse.
It's a little worse than this
That's-
Well, way to go, Ben.
You gotta call your legislator.
Yeah, way to go, Ben.
Yeah, so
That's
there's,
something we can basically tell them, you have to agree with you.
yeah.
But you understand my concern on that?
No, it makes sense, your concern. It's just, the state has really tied our hands on this.
Yeah, that's my big concern, because eventually you're gonna have to go back and they're gonna say, you are causing this. That's why I'm worried about this one. I don't like the way it sounds. All
I
right.
see what you're saying. We're gonna get used to that.
Yeah, everybody's gonna forget about this, and all of a sudden you have to have an election to have an increase in taxes, and
I
that's
get
all
it.
I remember.
But
That's
that's
an
why,
extra $1 million in revenue. that-
Right.
but that's why right now we promote it. And
Well,
because
but you're-
IDs lowering taxes, and
have
then it's like we're helping them out.
Yeah, but then they're gonna say, now you're.
They'd be happy because we're lowering, but we're lowering last year.
All right, so the superintendent requests the board of trustees convene in closed meeting and authorization by provisions of local act meetings, chapter 551 of Texas Government Code. This executive session according with Texas Government Code, section 551074. The time is 12:43. We're now in closed session. o'clock. We're back from closed session. We have item A, 551074, discussion action regarding personnel, consideration, appointment, employment, resignation, retirement, evaluation, resignments, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee.
Make a motion to approve as presented in executive.
Second.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Lozano, second by Mr. Torres. All those in favor? Item B. we've
No
got-
action, Mr. Board President.
No action? All right, so we've got adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Lozano, second by Mr. Torres. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.